Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Think Future podcast. I'm your host, Chris Kalabukas, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. Now I ask you, do you feel that innovation is meaningless? Do you feel innovation is meaningless? Because I was at a meeting the other day. With one of my clients, and we were in the innovation group, and the head of innovation, this is the top person in the innovation group, said, and I quote, "Thinking about the future right now is meaningless." So just so you know, I'm recording this episode in early October 2020, post-COVID, post-BLM, post all of this stuff going on. And the head of the group actually said to everybody in the meeting, thinking about the future at this moment is meaningless. And I thought to myself, wow, if you ask me, this is the perfect time to think about the future. This is when you should be thinking about the future. In fact, every moment we should be thinking about the future. We should be thinking about where we're going next. We should be thinking about things long term. Now, I think what happened is that this leader was talking about long term versus short term. We can only think short term because of the crises that are pounding upon us. But I think falling back on short-term thinking is one of the things that everybody falls back on. Everybody falls back on short-term thinking when these kinds of things are happening. And when people fall back on short-term thinking, that's when they make big mistakes because they don't see the long-term ramifications of their short-term thinking. And I would argue that in these times, we need to expand our long-term thinking and think further out into the future, further out beyond where we are today, and decide how to get to that point despite what's happening right now. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of companies. They're battening down the hatches and they're saying, you know what, we're just going to ride this thing out. But riding things out, there's two ways of riding it out. You can either surf on top of it and get to where you want to go or get to somewhere new and better and different, or you can just sort of hunker down, close yourself up in the monitor or something like that, just like batten down the hatches and ride it out. But the problem is that when you're riding it out like that, you have no choice in the matter. You just allow the waves of these crises to come over you and try to deal with them as best you can, instead of taking this crisis and using it as an opportunity to take you to the next level. I'll give you an example. I recently did a study on working from home and coronavirus. And one of the things I found very interesting is that we put together a report that went through every possible permutation of what was happening right now. And we looked at employees, we looked at their commute, we looked at the environment, we looked at businesses, we looked at collaboration, we looked at all of these things. And hands down, the absolute best solution was to try and get as many people to work remotely as possible, because the upsides of all of your workers being remote are so good compared to the downsides of forcing them to come into an office every day. I mean, think about tech companies. Tech companies, most of their workers have been able to transition to working from home with almost no effort whatsoever. All of these tech companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, all of these companies that do their work online, most of their work online, have been able to easily transition to a work from home model. So that tells me that they could have done it before. They could have done all these things which are positive for their employees, positive for commutes, positive for the environment. They could have done these things before but they had no impetus to do it. Everything was the way it was. Inertia had driven them to stay the same. And if you think about it, these are some of the most innovative companies in the world. They're some of the most innovative companies in the world, but they still want their employees to come into the office and commute every day, which has been proven to be terrible from a health perspective, terrible from a mental health, terrible from a physical health, terrible from all these perspectives. And now coronavirus comes in and drives us all so that we have to work from home. What happens? Everything just goes on as usual. So a crisis came along and it actually ended up with a better result. Now, sure, maybe some things will be worse. Say Google doesn't need to buy that huge piece of property to allow their workers to go on campus. Maybe that campus can be turned into low income housing. Who knows? Maybe we realize that all of this commuting that we've been doing has been terrible for the environment, has been terrible for employees, and we stop doing it. The thing is that without that long-term thinking, then you're going to continuously stay in crisis mode and you're never going to be able to get to the next level. So if you ask me, thinking about the future is not meaningless at this time or any other time, and we need to constantly keep our eyes on the horizon, look further out than 3 months or the next damn quarter, because that's what everyone does. Everyone looks to the next quarter. But if you look beyond the next quarter and the next year and the next 10 years, then you'll be ahead of everybody else.